Mr. President, at an appropriate time, I'm going to ask for some consideration of an amendment of mine, amendment number 6. My amendment would hold the Obama administration accountable for its recent decision to release more than 2,000 undocumented immigrants from detention centers across the country in the past month. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement claimed they were releasing these people because it needed to reduce its average daily detention population of about 34,000 people. This is a congressionally mandated requirement. They claimed they had to reduce the detention population for budgetary reasons. Week after week, agents were tasked to release so many individuals. At first, the Department of Homeland Security claimed that it only released a few hundred people. However, last week, the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement admitted that the administration had misled the American people by confessing that over 2,200 aliens were actually released. They continue to stand by the excuse that budget cuts were the reason for releasing these individuals. Simply blaming budget reduction as a means to turn a blind eye towards national security of the American people is a very dangerous plan, and one that calls into question the department's preparation for sequestration, particularly when you consider that months before sequestration, the Office of Management and Budget put out an order to all departments that national security, law enforcement, safety, and health should be a top priority. So if keeping criminals off the streets of the United States shouldn't be a top priority, according to the Office of Management and Budget, I don't know what should be. And so I want an accounting for it. And that's what my amendment does, a simple accounting for why they were released, what it was all about. But what's even more disturbing is the fact that the department had billions of unobligated funds from the past 2 years that could have been put into protecting the American people. On February the 27th, I sent a request to Secretary Napolitano questioning the decisions of the department. The letter, co-signed by Chairman Goodlatte of the House Judiciary Committee, was an attempt to better understand, just simple understanding, of how the department will better confront sequestration and reduce operational challenges that could affect the life, safety, and health of the American people, the same life, health, and safety of the American people that's evidenced by this very administration's directive going out of the Office of Management and Budget of the priorities that ought to be established during sequestration. Now, you know what? So often, as what we find from this administration, and even found in previous Republican administrations, letters that are embarrassing go unanswered. Unfortunately, this is not unusual. About a dozen of my letters to the Secretary of Homeland Security on just the immigration issue have gone unanswered. There's no respect for congressional oversight. It's very frustrating. We're on the cusp of undertaking a massive reform of our immigration system, yet getting answers to the most basic questions seems to be an impossible operation. Time and again, we have seen that this administration refused to be held accountable. And what we want is just information. It's not like we're saying that what the administration's done, even if we disagree with it, can't be done, shouldn't be done, but shouldn't the people know about who's being turned out in the streets that have been held in confinement for a long period of time? I fear what will become the President's promise of transparency if and when we do pass an immigration bill is just an example of things to fear in the future. Enacting a bill is one part of the process. Implementing the law is another part of the process. If we don't have faith in this administration now, what about trust for the future? So my amendment would require the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to submit weekly reports. Just submit reports to the House and Senate committees on appropriations and the judiciary. The reports will be required to contain detailed budget on how ICE will maintain the 34,000 detention bed occupancy levels authorized by Congress. It also requires ICE to provide the number of aliens released from detention, as well as the following information on aliens released for budget-related purposes, the conviction or charge for which they were detained, fugitive status, existing of prior deportation order, and the release terms of release. My amendment happens to be co-sponsored by Inhofe, Vitter, Boozman, Roberts, Coates, McConnell, and that's the co-sponsorship. Now, within the last few days, we've had the director of ICE, Mr. Morton, testify. Well, it was just yesterday in the House. Chairman Goodlatte said his testimony raised more questions. I'll put a press release in the record that expresses this. Last week, Mr. Morton said they released 10 level 1 offenders. These are people convicted of violent crimes. They are repeat drunk drivers, as an example. Yesterday, he said they only released 8. But he also said they were trying to relocate them and bring them back in. Well, if you got these dangerous people out on the streets, the public ought to know about it. And so I suspect that when I'm asking unanimous consent now, that the other side will object to my amendment. And I don't know why they want to go to such lengths to protect this administration when all we want is simple information. Just simple information. We aren't saying that the decisions made, even though we disagree with it, ought to be changed. We're just saying the public ought to know when you've got people that are violent people out on the streets, that they shouldn't be out in the streets. We ought to know where they are, why they were put out there, and what about it. But so I say the option of not allowing this amendment to have a vote, as I presume it's going to be objected to, I think their objections are indefensible. So at this point, then, I call up for consideration my amendment number 76. Ask for just 10 minutes of debate, and I'd like to have a vote on my amendment. I ask unanimous consent to do that.